Hi, everyone. We'll just give it a minute or so before starting to allow all attendees to come through from the waiting room. Hi, everyone. This is Chris Lethbridge from the China-Britain Business Council, and it's great to have you all online for today's webinar, Success at a Distance, Making China Work from you Making China Work for you from the UK. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that if you would like to submit questions, you can do so at any time using the Q&A function on your screens. So today is the final episode in our series entitled Success at a Distance, Making China Work from you Making China Work for you from the UK. Where we'll look at steps that UK businesses can take in the Chinese market while travel restrictions are still in place. So today we're joined by Arie from the PTL Group and Carl from Saimen Group to talk about all things manufacturing in China. Arie is PTL Group's general manager and based in the company's headquarters in Shanghai. He joined PTL Group in 2005 after 12 years of diplomatic service. Carl has over 10 years of direct China manufacturing experience, and he's an award-winning engineer and founder of the Saimen Group. So whether you're selling products in China or considering entering the Chinese market, manufacturing in China for China or even globally is something that should be on your radar. So with the ever-moving and kind of changing nature of global supply chains, diversification of where your company's manufacturing capabilities are has never been more crucial. So without further ado, I'd first like to welcome Arie to talk first.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay. So good morning in the UK, good afternoon in China. It's good to be here. Thank you, Chris, for the introduction. So let me jump straight to who we are. Why do I have some knowledge to share with you today? So I'm the GM of PTL Group. PTL Group was founded in the year 2000. So it's been over 21 years that we've been operating in China, helping more than 300 foreign companies to enter into the Chinese market. At the moment, we're employing more than 300 employees. We have 6 locations all over China. We are not just a consultant or service provider, we're actually a trading company that is helping and involved in the trading of our clients. And the 2 figures here are just an example of the trading activity that we are involved in. We've been selling more than 100 million RMB worth of goods into China, helping our clients with their business. And we help them to retrieve over $2 million in VAT refund, which is one of the activities that we are helping our clients with. This is probably the scope of services that we provide to our clients. It's quite wide, and we provide different services to different clients in different stages of their journey in China. So for some companies, we help them to recruit the first people or first sales team on the ground. We help them to host them in our offices. We help them to localize the team. We provide financial management and accounting for companies that we register for our clients. We provide some support on the marketing. We provide support on the logistics and fulfillment. We provide operational audits and business recovery services. And we provide some assembly and manufacturing support to our clients with the help of some of our partners, which is the topic of this presentation. I will skip my intro because Chris did a great job introducing my background. I came to China in '97, and I'm still involved in activity in China ever since. So I'll jump straight in. And many people have been asking me in the past year, is China still attractive? Do we still need to come to China, try to sell our products, or China is something that is not to be considered anymore? So I guess for people who used to travel to China and feel and get the feeling of the Chinese market, it's really hard to understand in what stage China is. When you come here, you see and you feel and you meet people, And I can, from my experience, from what I can feel, I can definitely say that China is almost exploding with economical and business activity. I think some of the reasons are that Chinese people cannot travel overseas anymore, or very little. And many people used to go overseas and do all their shoppings overseas, whether it's luxurious goods, cosmetics, health products, baby powder, or other items. Hundreds of thousands or millions of people who used to travel every year are locked or stuck in China and cannot travel anymore. So they consume these products here, and they want to find these products here. So for foreign brands, bringing these brands into China is definitely necessary, and you cannot ignore the needs and the demand. The Chinese government realized this need and actually dedicated the island of Hainan as a free trade zone, so people can go and do their shopping there using the fact that it's a free trade zone. So this is one initiative that they did, and thousands of people are traveling there every day. So definitely this is a major reason why foreign brands should come to China. Obviously, there's no traveling from China going out to visit exhibitions. So Chinese distributors or traders cannot bring foreign brands into China. So again, it's an opportunity for foreign brands to come and bring not only B2C brands, but also B2B brands according to the needs of their industry. What we see here is that the local consumption is exploding and booming. Part of it is because of the encouragement of the government. The government is trying to boost the local consumption, and I think they're doing a pretty good job. Just if I look outside of my office, there's an enormous amount of coffee shops, restaurants, all have been being open in the past year, actually. Shopping malls are setting up a new shopping mall. Almost every month we discover a new shopping mall. And it seems like that the Chinese consumers are hungry for good and quality goods. Part of it, I would say, it could be due to the fact that many overseas Chinese returned to China in the past 2 years, partially due to COVID. Some of them couldn't continue their studying in the university, so they went back home, or some people were looking for a safer environment. Anyway, they brought back to China higher standards, needs for consuming certain overseas products. So definitely China is hungry for foreign brands and foreign products. In some industries that China has a need, whether it's a technological need or other needs, definitely the local governments are encouraging foreign brands to come to China, and they would have a very nice package of benefits to encourage companies, foreign companies, to come and present the technology into China. And after all, we cannot ignore that China is the largest market. And if you come to China and you acquire even a fraction of the market, then it's huge for any middle-sized company who is willing to sell their products. And definitely it's you cannot ignore the market still. Now, after getting you excited about coming to China, I can say that it's definitely needed, but it's not easy. So there are a lot of barriers when you try to import your products into China, starting with import restriction, whether it's a specific license, customs clearance issues, special licenses, and so on. The most critical issue recently that we've been seeing is the transportation obstacles, the cost, the time, the delays, the ship that is stuck in the Suez Canal, all making the supply chains very, very complicated. COVID-19 is not helping either, because anytime there's even one case found in any port in China, they will shut down the entire port and the entire city around it. So this could create huge delays in importing any products into China. So the long supply chain, the long time create a huge delay, and not easy for companies that are signing contracts with Chinese customers that are waiting to receive their goods, and the goods are stuck somewhere in the sea. Then the other issue is technical support or providing spare parts or sending machines to be fixed and coming back. Technical people cannot come from overseas, so if it's a problem in a production line, you cannot actually solve it from overseas. This makes it quite difficult for companies who need this type of support on the ground. And then if we look at the competition, companies who do have an entity or operation or production in China, they are enjoying a lot of benefits. Some are local government benefits that are providing them, and some other benefits that I will mention soon. So if you were to come to China to try to sell to China, one of the solutions would be to actually start manufacturing in China. If this is your market and this is where you want to be, maybe, and this is the topic of our presentation, maybe you should consider moving some part of the assembly or the entire production and move it into China. And why would you do that? So, as I mentioned, the importation barrier, this is the first thing that you can overcome. You will overcome all the delays, the transportation, the vessels that are stuck somewhere in the sea, tariffs, all these new trade wars issues. Basically, if you're manufacturing in China, you don't have to worry about all the importation headaches, and this is a major issue to solve. The other reason would be that you manufacture in a space which could be closer to your suppliers. Some of the companies are anyway buying in China some of the products, some of the components, raw material, sending it out overseas and then importing it back to China. In this way, you save time, you save money, and you're near your suppliers and probably near your clients as well. And then you are manufacturing within your ecosystem. You get all your needs very near you, cheaper than anything else before. Then you have access to things that or deals that you couldn't enter before. There are certain tenders that are aimed only at Chinese manufacture. Now, when you manufacture in China, you can enjoy both worlds. On one hand, you say, I'm a foreign brand, but I'm manufacturing in China. So you could use the Chinese licenses to enter Chinese tenders that the government restrict to only Chinese companies. At the same time, on your marketing material, you can actually say, well, I'm a foreign brand, although I'm manufacturing in China. So as a foreign company, you can enjoy both worlds. Furthermore, you can basically meet the demands of your market and amend your product to the market needs. You'll have people on the ground, you'll have salespeople that will get feedback from the market, and you can adjust your product to the market needs. Also, China is offering very attractive facilities. In the past 5 years, we saw many factories that has moved out of China because of cost of production, because HR costs were rising in China. So many companies move out to Cambodia, to Laos, to Vietnam, and other places. But during COVID, they realized actually that the logistics and the infrastructure that this country have is not matching to the ones that China has. And basically the markets were actually back in China. So when they're manufacturing all over Asia and trying to sell back into China, they found that the logistics was too complicated and not efficient enough. So some of these factories are actually moving back to China. First, because the logistics infrastructure in China is really fantastic. Railroads, ships, trucks, so everything is very well organized. And then the market is actually here. So manufacturing near your market has a big advantage. And then we cannot ignore that there's a push from either the Chinese government or the general public that people and companies are encouraged to buy made in China. If there's Chinese product, even a little bit inferior to foreign one, what before used to be an advantage to foreign companies, these days the government is pushing companies or organizations to buy made in China. So if you're manufacturing in China, you can say, well, it is made in China. So you have a better chance to approach companies or industries that they're really pushing buying made in China. We have a good example: medical equipment. Hospitals are really pushed to buy everything they can buy. They need to buy in China. Only if they have some specific machine that they cannot find in China, only then they can get permission to import it and buy it from a foreign manufacturer. So this is just one example, and I'm sure there are plenty more. One issue that it's important to mention is trademarks and, of course, a copycat, because when you come and start manufacturing in China, this is the first question that we're being asked: how can we protect our IP? So the first question that we ask: have you registered your trademark in China? And if you haven't, and you're thinking about the Chinese market, this is the time to do it. No matter if you have activity or not, you may find out that even if you're not in China yet, by the time that you want to come to China, somebody may have registered your trademark. So this is something quite important. So to register it now. Now, it doesn't mean that if you register your trademark, it will prevent from copying your product, but at least you'll have the priority over the trademark, and nobody else can try and take it from you. However, if you have a trademark and you have a patent in China and you're manufacturing in China, even if you're being copied, it's not the end of the world. Because if you think of it, the cost structure of your product when you manufacture in China would be pretty similar to the cost structure of your copier. And if he will be cheaper, that means that he's compromising either on quality or quantity, or something is wrong with the product, because you're basically operating on the same ground, same cost for people, same cost for raw materials. So something must be wrong if he is a lot cheaper. So basically, if you're manufacturing in China, you have much better chances to sell, even if somebody is copying your product. And sometimes if somebody is copying your product, it's not the end of the world, because he's actually helping you to open the market, helping you to get the market to know your product. So actually, if somebody is copying you first, you're worth copying, which is it's a good thing. And then he's actually helping you to enter into the market. Few words about manpower. It's important to know that manpower in China is not as cheap as it used to be. I think it's people know already that the good old days, that's maybe not so good for some people, but the China is not that cheap anymore. So you do have enormous amount of manpower, but the labor law are protecting the employees, and they're not as cheap as they used to be. However, I would still think that it's cheaper than manufacturing in the Western country. And the good news is that the quality of people is getting much better over the years. Definitely in the management level. As I mentioned, there's a lot of overseas Chinese who were educated overseas, that they've worked overseas, and now they're back to China, and they are able to manage in a Western standards. They can communicate in foreign languages. So definitely you can find a good amount of people that can actually run your business on our Western standards. So if I want to present the three stages or three models of manufacturing in China, and I will present three options as a gradual entry into the manufacturing, because for some companies, it could be a bit intimidating going all the way in of setting out a factory. So we offer three stages or three steps or three models. So the first model is a taste of manufacturing in China, is actually using a partner to do contract manufacturing. This is a preliminary, low risk, light commitment manufacturing model, which means you engage with a service provider, that this service provider is contacting all the suppliers, service providers that you may need, raw materials, and get everything manufactured for you. Does the QC, make sure that what you ordered is what you wanted, and you get your product at a certain price, which you can later hire a sales team to sell into the Chinese market or export to other markets just as well. The second option is using an incubator for factories or industrial incubator. The incubator actually provides an existing facility, whether it's a building, it's a factory, it's a park where you can actually set up your own incubation, your own factory or assembly line. You can bring whatever you need, the tools, the machinery, and then hire the people. But the incubator is providing a team to support you with the establishment of the factory and the support on certain functions of the factory according to your needs, whether it's the HR, the finance, could be the logistics, the sourcing, the warehousing. The incubator has a team to support you and help you with the initiation of the project. And then going all the way in is setting up your own factory. This also have different options. You can take an existing building in a park that would like to encourage you and may give you a free building, or you can take a green field and start building your own factory from scratch. Obviously requires a lot bigger investment, and you control the entire process. What I would like to mention in all three models require what we would say an objective, trusted, professional service provider that can support the supervision and the monitoring of the entire operation in China. Whether it's the contract manufacturing, the service party that is helping with the contract manufacturing has to be somebody that you can trust, somebody that has the ability to coordinate all the different service providers and suppliers. So you need to have somebody who can be trusted and can manage your operation in China. Under the incubator, obviously the incubator itself would be the third party, the trusted party that will manage the operation and supervise and monitor and make sure that nothing is going wrong in the operation. And when you have your own factory, it is super recommended that you do have an external service provider that will come and check whether it's the finance, the HR, the warehouse, the stock, the logistic operations, and some of the manufacturing operations just as well. It is very important to have somebody neutral who would come and make sure, especially when, at this time when it's hard to send teams from overseas on a regular basis, like it used to be. Now to get an expert takes a long time, and sometimes it's impossible even to get an expert coming from overseas. So it's important to have somebody on the ground that can actually help you to monitor your operation in China. I have created this table. I'm not going into all the details, but this is basically breaking down the activities in each one of the business models that I've mentioned, and show that in each business model, you still need to have a third party to support you. So of course, there's a movement from contract manufacturing when you are almost totally dependent on the party that is doing the contract manufacturing. There is a shift through the incubator. And of course, when you're independent, you are taking more responsibility of the roles. But in any way, in each one of these models, you need to have an external party that can actually provide the support, supervision, and mentoring. And now one of these parties, and the reason why we are partnering with Saimen Group is because Saimen is one of these partners that we fully trust and we think are very professional, and they can actually be one of these trusted partners. And we have now Carl, who is a great partner, and we're doing a lot of projects with him. And he will take it from here, and he can actually explain further how is this going to be done. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arie. And then let me share my screen now. Get started. Okay, here we go. So good morning, everyone. So I'm Carl Breau from Saimen Group. So I'm an engineer. So we'll go much more into the details, I guess, of the manufacturing aspect of working in China. Just a very quick introduction on Saimen. You can, of course, find more information about our company or myself on LinkedIn or online. But we are, just back to the three models that Arie was just mentioning, we are a contract manufacturer. So we have licenses in electronics manufacturing, even electromechanical manufacturing, so we can play the role of contract manufacturing. We do We can also play the role in all three models, including just supporting somebody to build their own factory. I guess just out of interest, some of the projects we're working on quickly. So you see on the top left is a LED screen. So that's a big part of what we do, because I'm originally from Canada, and Canada is very cold. So when we do it in the winter,
Oh, just to let you know, you can't actually see your screen.
I'm sorry.
It's the screen share is not actually working.
Okay, let me do that again. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. Are we on now?
Yep, we are now. Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So let me just get this here working full screen. Push the bar a little bit. Okay. Just a minute. Just trying to reach the full screen. Okay, so now it's working, correct?
Yep, you're working well.
Okay, good. Thank you. So yeah, just right into what we're doing very quickly, just so you have a bit of context. So we do LED screens to Canada. We do, as you see, this is an example of electronic gun that we do as well. We actually work as a contract manufacturer. It's interesting to see, back to the reference from what Arie was just saying of manufacturing in China, for example, where we have a customer that is letting us manufacture for them things that are actually shipped to the Universal Beijing Center. So that's an example where they had no choice to have a local partner to do their manufacturing, as it was a requirement. So and then we're almost half and half. So half the time we actually manufacture for the Chinese market, and half the time we actually manufacture for the foreign market. So jumping into manufacturing. So I don't know if most people realize here, but actually presently all of China manufacturing indicators are very high. So essentially China is working at almost close to full capacity in terms of manufacturing. And if you look at the data, you hear a lot of the China, moving manufacturing or reshoring or manufacturing to maybe USA or even Vietnam. That's actually not really happening. Certainly not this year. And I'm not sure if you can see from the graph here, but China is now almost 30% of all world global manufacturing output. And that was 2019, and it's even higher today. So, and I think most people would think that China, actually, why is that happening? Is because China benefits from a lot of maturity in manufacturing in general, stability as well. It's been manufacturing for a long time, many products, as most of you know. But there's also an element of what we call completedness. China is one of the rare countries when you can actually make a complete product. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but complexity is now part of manufacturing, right? The products are getting more and more complex. And then it's, if you have something that has a plastic, steel, aluminum, glass, IC, PCB, electronics elements and everything, China can has a supply chain to support all of that product. And there's very few countries in the world that can do that, especially in the course of last year with COVID. And then one of the things that we see a lot is that it used to be, because now essentially all manufacturers at full capacity. So we say the new potential customers, especially me from Canada or other countries, could be England, we sort of get less love than we used to. So the prices are going up. Sometimes our orders get pushed a little bit further down the line. So it's been part of the journey over the last year, just the fact that China is essentially close to full capacity in terms of manufacturing. If we move to the next slide, the like I was just mentioning, as somebody who's managing manufacturing, I think the biggest change that we see now, as opposed to say 20 years ago, is really the fact that the products themselves are increasing in sophistication. Okay, so it used to be you would just only make a wood table would be a fine product that you could be manufacturing. 2021, that same table, especially if you're in a commercial environment, well, it's not enough. You will have electricity, probably outlets inside. You may even have lighting. You will have some glass. You have different elements there. So there's a very, very high level of sophistication. And that is one of the main impacts we'll see in manufacturing. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. That puts a lot of pressure on the tier one. So tier one is essentially the factory that does the assembly, the final one, if you want, that makes the final product itself. There's much more pressure, and you have to pay much more focus on that entity, knowing exactly who's doing that part of the assembly for many reasons. One of them because products are getting more complex, and also because this is also where your intellectual property is held. So that's a big focus as well of what you need to know. This year has been challenging for some of you here who do manufacturing, who may be buying some IC. There's been IC shortages. It's a little bit better now. We felt a bit of an inflection point, I would say, somewhere in our end of August, but still there's many elements that are in shortage. There's what we call the TP syndrome, which is the toilet paper syndrome, which is essentially just saying if you have enough people thinking that we're going to be running out of toilet paper at some point, you act in social media, at some point you actually do run out of toilet paper. And we see that across many other things, where essentially there's sort of panics going on in different ICs and materials and things like this, and people just starting to buy just to be sure they not run out of certain elements in their supply chain. And that creates shortages in actually many other areas, not just in IC. Of course, it's been the year of 360-degree disruption. So we saw raw materials increases, as most people know. Most recently, plastics are now going up because of the price of oil. There's certainly been increases in steel prices and aluminum. Of course, most people here will know also that logistics has been going up. It's probably interesting to point out that it's actually been going down in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So containers in USD would be, maybe a little bit less, between 5,000 and 10,000, of course, depending on the destination. It used to be a year and a half ago. And now it went all the way up to almost 30,000, which was, 4 to 5 times the price it was. And then in the last 2 weeks, well, first of all, we heard in the news maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago that the government actually in China was saying they would start to crack down on some of the profiteering that might be taking there. And I'm not sure if that's the direct link to what happened, but what really happened is that the prices of transportation has actually been going down about 30% in the last few weeks. So we're hoping that that's sort of the inflection point, and hopefully, there's no more sort of problems with ports or things affected by COVID that might affect that to go up again. The other thing I would say also is that there's sort of what we see, there's a range in every range now in China, meaning, if you choose to buy a certain product, say for example, you're trying to buy a compliant, for example, just an appliance that you would put in your home. Well, it used to be you put not so much choice, you find a supplier and that's who you have to deal with. But now vertically you have, no matter which product you use, I'm not sure, it could be a Bitcoin miners, for example, that we're doing technical procurement for. So you go into Bitcoin miners, okay, which is like a computer. And then used to be, you would find essentially 1 or 2 suppliers. Now there's a range of suppliers from, very low end to high end to mid end. So it's interesting to see how essentially there's high level of completeness in the offering from manufacturing. Okay, so like I was mentioning, I think the biggest change we see affecting us is really the complexity. Used to be BOM is bill of materials, as people in manufacturing here would know. Used to be a BOM would be 20 elements. Now we deal with BOMs of hundreds easily. Thousands is almost the norm. We had a project 2 weeks ago with the bill of materials of 13,000 different elements that were put into the product. Can you imagine? So that means that essentially from the tier one into the supply chain side, you have to find more than 10,000 suppliers that will supply you for that one product. Amazing. It's a robotic type of device, right? So that, how does that affect us now? Well, it affects us in many ways. If when you have that type of a product, if we stay on that sort of extreme example, you don't want to have your supply chain sort of half in China, half in the USA, and half in other countries in Europe or anything, because you're relying, for one piece to come out, you need to have 10,000 things going right on the supply side chain, right? Supply chain side. So that means that you're trying to find a place where you can actually source all of those elements. And that's what's been helping China, I would think, in the last 2 years. It's just the fact, like I was mentioning a little bit earlier, that it's got a very complete, very sort of comprehensive and many things you can find essentially on the supply chain side. So it's still the best place to do those products. Also, the thing is, if you're going to mass production, the mass production launch staging, which is essentially from the prototype to a large scale production sort of scenario, that takes much more time than it used to. You know, it would be obvious to everybody that if you have if you're making a wood table with a sort of a board and then 4 legs and some screws, then that's actually not so hard to put into production. You could probably figure it out in a month or so. And I'm sure people will be able to understand that if you have something that has 13,000 components inside, and even if you have a working prototype, the time to be able to get into production is extremely long. So that's, again, due to the impact of increased sophistication of the products that we need to manufacture. Plus, function testing is now the norm. So used to be essentially you would put in, if I still keep my example of the table, I'll say for the extreme example, but still you don't need to do any sort of function testing of a table. Does it work or not? But if you're making a robot or you're making some sort of electronic device, then you need to do function tests. Does the thing work, right? But that, just saying that, if you need to check if the robot does all the function that it needs to do before it ships out of the factory, that brings in a whole bunch of new testing at the end of the manufacturing, which is, you will have special jigs, maybe some movements, there's the screen, you have to upload the software. So that function testing also increases the level of complexity of what you're manufacturing. That's what we live from the inside. Back to what Arie was saying of the advantages of in China for China, aside from the example I was mentioning at the beginning, where, for example, if you need to sell to a SOE, a state-owned enterprise into China, they may force you to manufacture in China. But then there's other advantages. For example, I was always thinking that some of the customers in China would prefer to receive, for example, things made in USA or Canada or Germany. In some cases, it's true, but sometimes it's not. For example, we have a customer, they manufacture the big water park equipment. So that means underneath there's pumps, there's tubing to be able to essentially push water into the system. There was a lot of issues with compatibility because it was the imperial system, and this is a crowd from England, so exactly the same example. So if you come in with the imperial and then the power electronics, the voltages, the transformers, actually they don't connect very well into China. So when you're building in China, sort of by default, you're more compatible, you're easier to install, it's easier for the customer to receive your material. And we thought that was always a big advantage when we were actually doing in China for China. Equivalences as well, we always think, well, it's sort of equivalent. This metric is equivalent to that imperial. This code of UL is sort of equivalent to a GB code, but actually it's never perfect. And sometimes those sort of approximate equivalents, they actually don't work. So if you're in China for China, all these things sort of have a tendency to be easier to manage. There's a localization aspect, which is, well, sometimes, since you're making the product in China anyway with a Chinese team, how about you change this and that, and just some of the elements of the product that make it sort of more feel like Chinese. Could be just a color, could be an interface, could be the user interface, could be different things, very simple, small changes that just make your product, since you're making it here for the Chinese market anyway, might as well make some changes, tweak it a little bit to make it even more suitable for the local market. The fact that you're in China for China, you have a local team, right? So everything becomes more like local to local, which is easier. You have a servicing issue, you have a maintenance, you have somebody who's asking a question about operation of what you're manufacturing. Well, just give it a phone, same time zone, same language. It's much easier to manage in the long term. And then I sort of like to bring up the issue of dual branding and brand positioning, is that sometimes if you're here, you can actually make something that's quite different from what you make in your home country, right? You can decide to have your own. You could a bit of a Chinese brand on the device. You can have a bit of different colors, things like this. You can almost reposition your product a little bit, not make it totally different, but certainly make it more suitable for the Chinese market. So we'll go through the do's and don'ts, and then just a very quick overview of what's trending. So the do's, I guess, for China would be, I think my first recommendation is what we call the intercultural interface. So you're a foreign company, you have a Chinese team. Somewhere in the middle, there's a foreigner from your team talking to a local Chinese person from essentially your local team. that interface is very important. The person that's there, you have to find the person that really has this sort of intercultural skills, that is able to work in a multicultural environment, especially in manufacturing, where it's also interdisciplinary, where you have engineers talking with designers and sales teams, and so you have to have people who are able to work in this sort of very international environment. IP is a big topic, of course, the do's. So you have to protect your IP. We could do a whole hour just on IP protection, but I would just remind you that, there's a legal aspect, and yes, you can defend IP in China if you do it properly. There's also sort of tactical aspects to it, for example, not sharing information to people who don't need to know, to have essentially give them more private IP information to people who have a certain seniority, etc. Those sort of things you have to do. I think if you have partners with you, you take time to find the right partner, because that ultimately becomes a big part of your success, who you're working with. And everything is about technology now. So you need to have somebody on the Chinese side that understands your technology. If you're thinking, well, no, we'll just have somebody tech on the HQ side, nobody in China, that doesn't work. The don'ts, it's the overall saying in China, things are moving very quickly here. So it's better to be sort of very flexible and sort of adapt to things that are changing very quickly. So you don't need to wait for things to be perfect, but you need to react very quickly. So you move from one step, do the best you can, adjust the next step, as opposed to a lot of prior planning, thinking how things are going to happen in China. So we just recommend to go sort of short-term goals and then adapt very quickly. That's the best way to work here on the management side. I don't agree with the fact that people say in China things are so different from abroad, in terms of business practice. Ultimately, it's quite similar actually. But amidst all the big differences and the risks, you need to have a good product, a good offering. The price needs to be good. You need to take care of your team. You need to, do good finance planning. All those things are very similar. So don't go too much into the thinking of this is so different that you just forget sort of basic business principles when you're doing business here. Don't forget to rely on what's already known. It's very rare that you have somebody going to the Chinese market that there's not somebody who did something similar before. Find those people. You may have found some of them already today, and then work with them to be able to help you out. And don't go at it alone. Especially at the beginning. Ultimately, it can be your own thing, but I would certainly recommend in the short term to find somebody a little bit what I was just saying just before, that knows how to do it already. Maybe just the last 2 or 3 minutes on what's trending in China. So what's trending in Chinese business? Well, there's a lot of talk about the 3 S's now. Is that to understand China, you have to understand about speed. So we talked a lot about speed during this discussion here, about scale and about sophistication. So quickly, China is about speed, just in terms of everything happens so fast, the speed of technological adoption, the speed of competitors hitting you as you're entering the market, and just the overall speed of growth and changes here. Scale is important because scale sometimes changes your strategy. Of course, there's a lot of people in China. It's a very big country. Economy is also very strong. So you can, in some instances, you can rely on scale. So meaning you can work maybe with a model that can work on the very, high volume, lower margin, as opposed to maybe some countries like, I'll keep the example of Canada because I'm from Canada, where you can work, you need to have high margin because you don't have a big market. But here in China, it's a bit different. And you have to remember that China is actually a very sophisticated market, especially in a city like Shanghai, for example. If you go into Shanghai today, for one thing, it is now the most expensive city in the world. So don't go into the Chinese market thinking that you're going into where there's no sophistication, where you don't need to have almost a perfect product. That's not the case anymore. Guochao is a bit of a trend. It's the Guochao, which is the national wave. So if you're thinking of doing a little bit of localization on your product, it's worth to know that Chinese, a bit like Arie was saying as well, is getting, for good reason, they are getting more proud of their local brands, a bit of a Chinese feel to the products, and some elements that you see here on my screen actually refer to that. Of course, digitalization, you've heard that 1,000 times already, that China is very digital already. We see now trends towards what's called the olive economy, where there's actually an objective now of trying to push the middle class. You know, the wealth pyramid used to be a pyramid where very few people are very wealthy. A lot of people are under sort of poor. The objective that was announced now is try to go to, this is actually a football, not a olive, but I'm sure you see the example. So that essentially that the middle class would be more in the middle class. So those are there, and you see a lot of social measures that are going in that direction. And then on my last slide, I would just like to take just a few sentences on dual circulation and decoupling. I often refer to China on the technological side to be sort of like Galapagos Island. You know, there's of course, everybody knows that there's no Facebook, there's no Google, there's no sort of those big sort of, I would say, predators, you know, there. So it created a whole ecosystem of different technologies. The platforms, social media platforms are different. People know that, but that affects your marketing, affects your product, affects how you communicate with your customers and employees. But even more now, on the back end, the technology platforms are also decoupling. So as you're, for example, if you have something that is very reliant, an obvious example, if you're very reliant on Facebook, for example, for your sales or marketing, or even maybe if you have a game on Facebook abroad, then if you want to do the same product in China, then of course you have to rely on, WeChat or other platforms which are here, and that creates also this challenge, I would say, on the manufacturing side, where the technological platforms that are behind the products are also very different. That was my presentation for this morning. Thank you very much for your attention.
Cool, thank you for that, Carl. So we've got roughly 10-15 minutes just for some questions and discussion following that presentation. So if anyone does have questions I'd like to put to either Arie or Carl, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. To get the ball rolling, one of the questions that I had was just around managing quality control in China. Obviously, if you can't get out to China, particularly at the moment, or if you don't want to spend 3 weeks in quarantine, what are some of the strategies and how can you make sure that the standard is being met for your product?
I would take this question, Arie, if you agree. So I think, well, first of all, aside from sort of the very common, just finding a third party to go there, which was already always been there, the new trend that we see, back to what I was referring, that products are now getting more sophisticated, more electronic. Okay, I see more and more sophisticated jigs to do function testing. Okay, for example, so you're at the end of a production line, and we have a product, for example, it's a little computer for a bicycle. Okay, so at the end of the line, so this little computer, you can touch the screen, you can do, of course, it's got navigation and these type of devices on there. And we actually, with the help of the customer, we devised the jig for function testing at the end, which just does all the function testing, but which is also connected to the customer, back in this case, USA. So the USA customer can see all the data flowing from, okay, is the PCB working well, or is the function well? This sort of rubber robotic finger goes there, does a few tests on there, and then we never saw that before, right? It used to be you would send somebody for QC, and then because they were stuck with that exact same issue of thinking, we want our people to be there locally to do testing, but then as that was not possible, they just went to this very sophisticated jig, and it actually works very well. And then it's even allowed them to do other things. For example, it used to be that if you want the software that is running the device, what we call the firmware that's inside the device, used to be they would need to give the firmware to the manufacturer in China, which made everybody very nervous because essentially they had the code to be able to work the device, which is a bit of a IP protection challenge, back to sort of some of the tactical aspects of protecting IP. But in this case, since they're connected into the device and it's the last stage, and this is actually where you would be uploading the firmware, actually they upload the firmware. directly. So they put on the jig, they upload the firmware from Canada. Well, it's done automatically, but still. And then they can see if it's working well, do function testing. Essentially, aside from just maybe some elements of visual inspection that are still need to be done locally, but are sort of secondary to sort of the big function testing. That's a big change I've seen. The sophistication of jigs for QC.
That's quite interesting and a very interesting example. Maybe they just need a camera so they can also do the visual inspection at the same time.
Exactly. You see that now of going. We've had customers. They say, "Can you just bring?" And we sometimes it could just be WeChat. I want to see what's going on. This sort of offline type of environment where totally, of course, with the jig on the back, you have a camera. So these more, I guess, a bit of what we see digitalization. There's also software now which is available to do QC at a distance. I've seen it, for example, where the QC person in China, even though it's not from the employee, but they use a platform where they use the customer's platform to be able to input and answer essentially the questions related to QC. And then if they take a picture, for example, that they need to upload to the software, then the picture is sort of time located. There's a time, there's a location. They know the picture was taken, at which location at which time. So there's sort of tricks like this to be able to do it's doable at a distance if you want to.
Okay, so we've got a question come in. And is, how do you think about forming joint ventures between a foreign company and a Chinese company as a Chinese market access strategy?
Okay, I'll start with this, Carl, and you can complete. It's kind of funny because Carl and myself had 2 hours presentation yesterday to a manufacturer that was asking the same question, whether it should come to China and form a joint venture. So we don't have 2 hours, but I'll try to shrink our answer. So unless it's a restricted industry that you don't have a choice and you have to have a joint venture with a Chinese client, we strongly recommend not to consider this option. The main reason is that there's different agendas between the foreign partner and the Chinese partner, and the foreigners don't really understand this. It seems like the joint venture could be a good option because the Chinese partner can bring the suppliers, he can bring the factory, he can bring the clients, he can bring the sales channel, he can bring all of his government contacts. But in fact, there's no reason why the Chinese partner he has it, but there's no reason why he would share it with a joint venture. He will use it for his own benefit, but he's not going to give it for free. He's been building these connections and infrastructure for 20 years, and there's no reason why he would actually share it with a joint venture. He may use all the knowledge that will be accumulated in the joint venture. He may use the income, the profits, and from our experience, it is very rare that a joint venture foreign partner actually saw any benefits or dividends or any profits from the joint venture. So of course, it depends on many aspects. It depends on the partner, depends on the interest, depends on the industry. But as a general rule, I would say that it's very, very risky to rely on a joint venture partner. It would be a better idea to come to China, set up an entity, set up your own factory, and then enter into some sort of a relationship with a partner, with a local partner, to use either his sales channel or either his suppliers, but don't go all the way in. You give to the joint venture your technology, and then you're in the mercy of your partner because he cannot come to China. He has everything. He owns the people are loyal to him. And then at any given moment, he can just lock you out of the factory and just take it somewhere else.
Carl, did you have anything else to add on that point? Or?
Well, what I would say, I myself actually I have one JV and I have 4 woofies in China. And I think it's interesting to mention that I did the JV first. Ever since, I've only been doing 4 woofies, and now you'll be woofies in the future. But not to say I still have a relationship with my JV partner, but it just seems to me that there's enough. It's like if you add all the things we've been discussing today as issues you need to manage, that if you have a JV, then all of a sudden you're stuck with all the problems from the JV partner, and then direction and everything. It seems to me I've got enough problems already managing my own Woofy and my own things. I don't need to. And then, all the advantage you would gain from a JV, and of course not to say it cannot work, because it's still working actually. Our JV we created in 2014, it's still there. But it's really a thing of direction, of management, of independence, and then also sort of protecting IP and some elements of control that you have over your entity. So I would just think that even though sometimes JV can be faster, it's a bit of a shortcut you can take, because maybe the partner already has a building or already has a network. It's true, it is easier, but as time goes by, I just sort of prefer to be managing things on our own, because you can always do it sort of on a contractual or sort of partnership basis, right? So if you're thinking, well, I don't have enough knowledge to manage a factory, well, instead of creating a GV and locking yourself in with a partner that you're not sure how things are going to go, well, you can find just another company that can support you a little bit to the different models that Arie was mentioning earlier to do that. If you want a GV to have access to a specific customer, well, of course, you can also find a customer and sort of create that relationship from something that you can control, because it's actually, if in the future you want to go from a Woofy to a GV, that's actually very easy to do. You can almost do it in a week, right? But pulling out of the GV, saying all that was shared before is now all of mine, it's a bit of a higher hill to climb.
Yeah, I mean, changing direction a little bit. In terms of kind of physical locations in China, do you guys have any thoughts on that? So obviously, we've mentioned Shanghai being an incredibly expensive city, but then on the flip side, there's a huge kind of talent pool and technical speciality in that city. Then there's also, on the flip side, you've got kind of places further west, Chengdu and Sichuan, places like that. I mean, how do you get that kind of balance between location, and is it a big factor, or is it actually you only kind of go to these manufacturing locations? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I can start by saying that definitely depends on many factors. First of all, what industry you're in, whether you need to be in the cluster of companies in your industry, whether you want to be closer to your suppliers, whether you want to be closer to your clients, to ports, to different parts of the country that are known for specific industry. You can also consider government, local government benefits, and there are so many local governments and local parks that are approaching us and offering us, just bring us foreign companies and we'll give you free this and free that, and tax free and building free and office free. And this is really confusing the foreign companies, because they think of all the free things, but they don't realize they may get stuck in the middle of nowhere with no good talent pool of people, with no infrastructure, without being able to get visa for foreigners, for example, or in an area they don't know how to manage foreign companies. So there's many factors that need to be considered, and not be tempted by all of these things that seems very tempting at the beginning, but then you're stuck in a place which is not really suitable for you. So of course you need to have somebody who understands and take the complete set of reasons where to set up your entity, and then make sure that you're in the right place, even if sometimes it costs more, sometimes it's worthwhile paying more for people or for location, if it's the right location for you.
Carl, you look like you're about to hit the button.
Okay, sure. So, well, I could just add maybe, it's the same point really, with just the one of, it's like, where, if I ask you the question, so if I want to build a factory, where in England, where should I build it? It's like, yeah, I don't know. So, but at the same time, there are some elements you need to take into account, right? Which are, there's some clusters of, there's some reasons why, there's some clustering where specific products are sort of more suitable for certain areas of China. And then it's just worth to a little bit to the point of Arie as well, not not to be you're the big candy from, okay, I have a special tax rebate from a specific area there. Sometimes there's a reason for those, sort of seem too good to be true type of proposals. So just be wary that, it's an important decision, and it's an important decision. So you need to find, either you do a deep analysis, deep understanding of this decision you need to make, and just take into account every element before you decide to do it.
So we are actually out of time today. I just wanted to give Arie and Carl, do you have any last remarks for attendees? How can they find out about your companies, and if they wanted to get in contact, what's the best way of doing that?
Well, honestly, through our email. I think my email is at the end of the presentation. I guess Carl as well. Obviously, through the website, WeChat, if somebody has WeChat, and we have a representative in the UK. Dor is also in this Zoom call. We can share his details as well, and we are a member of CBBC. So obviously, through CBBC, we can actually be available.
Same here. You can also check LinkedIn. LinkedIn is also a good platform for more information if you want more something personal, but all the things that and we do also work with Dor. So Dor would be the best access as you're working with us from England.
Excellent. Okay. Well, look, thank you both for that those presentations today. I think it was a really interesting discussion about manufacturing in China. As a follow-up, I'll share a recording of this on YouTube if you kind of wanted to replay any of the sections. And I can also include Dor's contact details for anyone who wanted to follow up with either Arie or Carl. But once again, thank you very much, and hope you've enjoyed this broader series about operating in China while restrictions still remain in place. But thank you both.
Thank you
very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.